Hey, Alex, I am so excited to bring you to the first patient episode of our podcast. How are you today?
Doing good. Yeah, I'm so excited to be doing this. I was really excited when you asked me. So happy to talk about my journey.
I know. I don't know why it took me so long to do this. But I think it was when we met for coffee and I'm like, my gosh, this is a really great thing to chat about because I feel that when people hear other people's stories, it gives them hope. And so I'm hoping to speak with people who have a variety of different things that someone can connect to. So I love your background as well, being an athlete. So I would love for you just to start off with letting us know what is your history? Like before you came and worked with us, what did you have going on? And then tell us a little bit about your nutrition experience as an athlete in college.
Yeah. And then it's funny because I know me and you have talked a lot about it, but like to give like context just on my story. So obviously, I think my perspective, like you said, like it comes a lot from the athlete mindset. I played soccer in college at a smaller Division I school, which was like 4 years ago. So these past 4 years have been a lot about transitioning out of like pushing my body to its limits. I was constantly on the go, constantly eating, so much to sustain like how much I was working out. And it was just a completely different lifestyle. Whereas now I'm like sitting at my computer. I am like, this is what my day to day looks like. I'm in medical sales now. So if I'm not sitting in front of a computer, like giving demonstrations and working, I'm either traveling and doing more of like on-site type things. So it's a complete transition from constantly on the move, not really paying attention to what I ate before. I mean, I've generally always been healthy. My parents are pretty healthy. So I feel like that's always been the forefront. Especially like with playing a sport, I always want to make sure I felt good, but it was definitely never like a controlling factor in my life. And transitioning now, I think a lot of athletes deal with this, but there was this huge, like basically what the heck do I do now? I'm a lot more sedentary. I'm not constantly running like 8 to 10 miles a day and lifting weights and doing X, Y, and Z. So I came to you all I tried a million different things. And I think I was kind of just done with quick fix type of platforms and whatever it was to like kind of educate me on what I should be doing with my body. I finally was like, you know what? I feel like working with someone that actually knows about my background, like running tests, seeing what's going to work best for me, understanding what foods is going to work best with me. And it completely changed my life because I was definitely in a really, really dark hole. And I think a lot of athletes are, I think a lot of people are, but I
Yeah.
definitely speak to like the athlete transition. And I wish like I could motivate every athlete to like pursue
Yeah.
like this.
What do you feel like are your top nutrition things you had to unlearn or
Yeah.
or I guess expand upon? Because not everything is wrong what you learn, but it's different from being an athlete to just living being a healthy woman human.
Totally. No, totally. And I think so, and I know this is going to resonate deeply with athletes, but this can resonate with anyone that's like driven and works off a structure. So I think that like my mindset has always been about, being given something and then I have to perfect it. And I perfect things by being given structure. So I didn't really have emotion tied to like, sounds bad, but like a lot of things growing up. Like my emotions are more so tied to the sport. Like for me, it was with nutrition specifically, eat within these time frames, eat this amount of food. And I just didn't really have emotion associated to it. It was like growing up, it was like, okay, go work out for 2 hours, go lift X weight, watch this amount of film. And with food, like I said, it was like, get this amount of carbs in with no education about like how nutrient dense things were. It was just
Okay,
like
so very macro
calories.
focused.
Yeah, it was very like get calories in, like drink a lot of water. And that was kind of like coming into it. That's where I felt like I was just so misinformed in what was going to be good for my body. And I definitely like in the transition, I mean, it's been like a whole new bunch of information thrown at me. And I think like it's taken me years to come to a platform like this because when you go from kind of just the athlete mindset of following like, okay, like have to hit X amount of like calories, have to eat at X times during the day. and just not thinking about it. Like I didn't have autonomy over it. I was just doing it because my coach said
Yeah.
so or whatever. Going into like the real world, we have all freedom. That was very
Yeah.
overwhelming. I didn't have a lot of control. And I think that that's what led into, probably some disordered eating,
Yeah.
just just not understanding food and how it impacted my body. So it's like a very long-winded answer, but uh,
Yeah. No,
yeah.
I mean, I think like if it fits your macros and stuff is pretty typical for like a lot of athletes, even not
Mhm.
even team sport athletes in college, but just athletes in the gym that are trying to like get the best, like, physique and stuff.
Mhm.
Macros is just, it's huge. And I guess there are smart ways if it fits your macros of just making sure they're nutrient dense foods and eliminating the processed stuff.
Yeah.
But I definitely can see where that is like just the main focus because it is so like sports driven and there is just so much more to the story. Do you feel like some or any symptoms or issues stemmed from those dietary habits?
Oh my gosh. Yes. I feel like,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think and it's hard because now I'm so grateful for all of it because once I've gone through those years of like it is a lonely feeling. Like, and I know I don't know like many women that don't struggle with some sort of either disordered eating or like just feeling uncomfortable or not confident in their own body just because they have a poor relationship with food or they're misinformed. Um, but I think for me, like kind of bring it back to the athlete thing, like I always grew up like super fit and it's because I was constantly on the go and like I just like I said didn't think about food as much and I was lucky enough to be raised in an environment where like my mom always put healthy foods in front of me. And when that was cut off very quick, I remember like graduating school and immediately like I move out to Park City, Utah, getting my job, and I just had no structure whatsoever, and immediately would fall into like eating large quantities of food because I was bored. Like I just had so
Yeah.
much free time, and then I would restrict. It's like the typical like
Yes.
over working out then to overcompensate, which with an athlete especially, that's scary because I'm already kind of like over the average fitness level. So I'm like definitely going to like toxic lengths and like I would go and
Yeah.
run like 15 miles after eating like ice cream one
Oh my
night. And so,
gosh.
like,
Yeah.
things like I have so many like stories like that. So like yeah, to answer your question more specifically, like I was dealing with just, you know, like eating a lot, restricting a lot, and then like doing like fast constantly. And that was influenced me so much. I mean, like I was just I was going through periods of depression.
Yeah.
I was not confident whatsoever. I was very inflamed. I went through so much weight fluctuation, where, I would range between like 20 pounds almost, where it was just crazy
Wow.
how much my body was like shifting back and forth. And it's just like a never ending battle. It was just like, I constantly was feeling like, okay, well, if I'm not restricting, and working out like a crazy person, doing all this stuff, I'm not going to look good. I'm not going to feel good. And then the moments where I let go a little bit, it's like, is this my life? Like, do I have to be constantly going to like crazy means just to look
Yeah.
a way? So, it took years of going through that. And
Yeah.
yeah.
What do you feel like your main symptoms were, like physical symptoms, like that were really bothersome to you? Things like bloating or headaches
Oh my
or,
God.
things of that nature. What were like the most painful for you to
I
go
mean,
through?
well, we've kind of talked about this. I didn't get my period for
Oh
like,
yeah.
yeah, like, I would get my
Yeah.
period, my gosh, once every 6 to 8 months. Like, and I had been on the same like birth control for, I mean, gosh, since I was 17, 16. So that was
Yeah.
was never just, yeah, very irregular period, which was super frustrating. I was very moody and that probably came from lack of confidence and a bunch of other things. I was constantly bloated. I mean, I was like, that was the most uncomfortable because I came from being like, you know,
Yes.
being relatively ripped my whole life. And then like all of a sudden I just constantly felt like disgusting and like
Yeah.
being inflamed. So those were like I would say like being bloated and the like lack of having a regular period. Those were really, really frustrating to deal with on a regular basis. So yeah.
Yeah. And this is actually, I love this conversation actually when we did meet. Like, let's talk about birth control. Like, what was your journey? And then like, just, I remember you letting me know, like you and Claire having this conversation. Claire's one of our dietitians, backstory. So what was that journey like for you? Because I know so, which honestly is a little bit more encouraging because I know so many younger women who are starting to question things
Mhm.
more than ever, because I feel like ask decades before, they'd be like, no, everyone's on birth control, it's totally fine. Now I feel like the doors are opening and people are starting to realize about it. So like, what was your relationship with birth control? And then obviously like, whole process of getting off, but I know you were a little resistant to it too.
Oh, totally. I mean, I looked at Claire like she was crazy, like Claire, but it was just very much so
Yeah.
something. Like I had a partner and I was like, I want to be safe and I
Yeah.
don't ever want to risk something like that. And I think for me, I mean, like at the time I like was going through a breakup. So I was like, okay, Claire,
Yep.
like, hey, you know what? Now I have a time where I'm just gonna, this is a perfect opportunity to get off of it. And genuinely, like that's when I saw the difference. I got my period back immediately, like within like
Nice.
in 2 months, which like maybe sounds long for some people, but for me, like a person that
It's
doesn't,
not.
yeah, like it was like
Yeah.
immediately within 2 months, got back onto a regular period, lasted for 7 days. Like it was a very regular period. Like it wasn't heavy, it wasn't light, like it was just like a normal period. And also like I didn't, when I got it back after coming off of birth control, like it was crazy how much my weight just stabilized. And I
Yeah.
didn't need to necessarily step on a scale to see that. I could kind of just tell like within my own clothes. I think something that always been like self-conscious about is the fact that like when I would, have a good day of eating versus a bad day of eating, like my weight just has always easily fluctuated. If I eat healthy for a week, like I will naturally look leaner. And if I like
Yeah.
eat really bad over a weekend, like I really
Me
bloat.
too.
Yeah, like it's just like I don't know. Like I have friends that can eat McDonald's every day and they're like they constantly will look the same, but that's just not how I react internally or externally. And like
Me either.
yeah,
Even things like I'm like even like getting the healthier options at just like normal restaurants. I'm setting aside like farm to table restaurants and all that, but
yeah,
like just eating like grilled chicken or like roasted vegetables at like a normal restaurant. I'm like, I swear it's like the seed oils. It's
yeah,
like a
totally.
complex of things. It's like even though I'm eating like a relatively good meal, but like I
Yeah,
still feel it. And I'm like, oh, my face feels puffier or like
everything.
I'm just more bloated. Yeah, I totally feel it.
It's everything. And that was like probably the biggest shift I noticed is like when I came off of it, obviously the regular periods was a huge thing, but I just wasn't, and granted, like I mean, like just a preface, I'm not going out and getting like in and out 5 days a week. So like I will just like preface it with that. But I mean, when I do have moments where I'm with friends and like I'm not a huge drinker, but like let's say like I go out and like I do want to have a drink and I get a burger and whatever, just I feel like before I immediately would have all this bloating and all this like extra weight and it made me feel so self-conscious. And I was like, so I get in this like these weird mood swings about everything. Now it's like I can like have a milkshake one day and like I don't wake up and my body doesn't like hate me. And it was like that's
Nice.
been the weirdest transition is, and that's probably due to the fact that like also Claire really helped me like stabilize my diet. Like I was doing a lot less of like the, like binge restrict.
Yes.
That could definitely support that. But like I just really noticed it in my transition from being on birth control to off it. It's like cravings went down and like regardless of if I did have like treat myself to something, I didn't see such like a drastic change in my body. Like I didn't see like,
Yes.
feeling just like absolutely disgusting the next day. Like you still,
Yeah.
regardless of what, like regardless, if you go eat a milkshake, you're not going to feel amazing. But it's like
Not
the
as extreme. Not
yeah,
as
it wasn't as
extreme. Yeah.
extreme.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
feel like that goes back to like the health being like a bucket analogy. And it's just like, taking out all the things that you can that like overfill the bucket. Because that's when we become really symptomatic is like when that bucket is like overflowing.
yeah,
But the more you take out, the more like I don't know, leeway, I guess you have
yeah,
to, if you go out have a milkshake, it's not going to make you overflow.
yeah,
But obviously it's not going to make you feel like the 100%. But I definitely have times where I can eat like we're at a kid's party, I have Domino, like a couple slices of Domino's, and I actually do feel fine
Yeah.
the next day, and it doesn't bug me. Because again, I think it comes back to that like bucket analogy. And there are times where even one meal can like set me over. I'm like, gosh, I feel puffy. And then I have to like kind of revert and like look back and be like, okay, what have I done this week? Like, how am I feeling? I'm like, oh, my stress is higher this week. I've been like on the go, go, go. So I mean, it's just like times of reflection where like it starts to make sense of like, okay, I can see why I'm like not feeling the best. But I also love those times where I'm like not eating something ideal and I do feel actually okay. I'm like,
No,
love
yeah,
this.
that's also so true. But I will say, like, I think a huge reason also like why that was so pivotal in like my journey with just my health and body image and everything is like for me, again, like the athlete perspective is like I'm a perfectionist through and through. Like when I achieve something, I want it to be to its absolute best. And the way that my brain's been wired is like the moment that I maybe like mess up or don't achieve perfection, I'm kind of like, okay, well, let's just ditch this and like go off the deep end. And I think a lot
Yeah.
of people kind of think that way. And so the like just like the comfort and kind of like just the fact that I could feel somewhat better after like having something like that and not feel
Yes.
like terrible and like hating myself and falling into that pit. That saved me years of just like, because if I
Wow.
feel that way about something, then I'm just like, okay, well, like let's just kind of go off the deep end this week. Like if I already feel bad now, like might as well enjoy all the crappy foods and like I'll just start on Monday. It's like
Yes.
so whatever that is. And so I think that was something else is like, okay, like if I'm generally eating healthy or what's good for my body at least, and then I'm in a social situation where before I would get like a ton of anxiety about having to eat something that goes against me. If I just like
Yes.
have something, don't feel bad the next day, it's like, oh my gosh, I can continue on my journey. I don't have to like go down this whole path again. So I think
I
that's
love that. The
yeah.
all or nothing mentality is definitely an issue. Like definitely even I see it outside of athletes. And I think that there's a time and a place when sometimes that strictness and that like more intense is okay. But like in the end, like we're trying to all get to that place where it's like, oh, I'm going to a wedding. I'm gonna have wedding cake. I'm gonna have this crappy food. And like
Yeah.
that's okay. Like we're living, we're humans. But then we're just like next day we're back on our routine and just doing our normal things. And like you know how to reset yourself.
Yeah.
That is such a what do you think is like the biggest thing that helped you kind of overcome that mindset block? Because that is a very common one.
Oh, the all or nothing. I mean, like it's definitely like
It's just a
it
work in
to this
progress over
day,
time.
yeah, to this day, I'm always going to like, I mean, I'm always kind of having that all or nothing mindset block, which is why I think a lot of people probably struggle with food, is because that's something that you can't really have that mindset with.
Yeah.
But with food specifically, um,
It sounds
gosh,
like you give yourself a lot more grace than
yeah,
like
like
you do or
honestly, that's
used to.
probably what it is the fact that like I think the biggest thing that Claire taught me is that like when I came into this, I came into it being like, I want to focus on my relationship with food. That's where I came
Yes.
into this with. And I think she quickly was like, like asking about like, what is it like your digestion? Like what's your sleep like? What's your water intake like? Like, are you meditating? You work out like a crazy person. Have you ever tried reeling that back? Like there was this very holistic approach that I was really pushing back on. And then like, yeah, birth control also, like all of that. Like, I mean, this there was this holistic approach that I was kind of like, dude, I don't need like support and all this. Like, I got this all figured out. I get like whatever. I just want to figure out what food to eat. And I think a lot of people probably think that as they
I
disregard,
agree.
discredit all the other factors that come into it. And for me, when I was like, oh my goodness, it is not food that's like the number one thing on the top of this pyramid that's affecting my life. It is like a combination of everything. And once you
Yeah.
give like equal respect to all of the factors, then it's just like, yeah,
Agreed.
it's hard to like sit there and hate on yourself for food. Like it's like there's so
Yeah.
many other things going on. So that's what really allowed me to have grace is it's like, oh my gosh, there's a whole life. I mean, it's just there's so many things that influence it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I know. That's like definitely people give us, I feel like the weird eyes and the looks when we start talking about like past trauma and they're like, what are we doing? Like this is not like food related. And I'm like, I promise there's a reason for this.
No, totally. Like But that's the thing is, and I've been through, and that's what I was telling her too, is I was like, I've had years of going to therapy and like trying to pull out the emotions behind food and like
Yeah.
everything else. And so that's why for me, like I like wanted to even like speak with you on this experience is because this was like an amazing way. I think I was getting really therapy is great. I think therapy is incredible, and I think
Yeah.
people can definitely lean on it. Um, but this is what helped me get over like all versions of my disordered eating and like everything.
Wow.
I think it was because it was like scientific while also being so curated to your body, and like you can understand how food support you. You can understand how your
Yeah.
sleep impacts you. Like take away the weight of like you being a failure because food stresses you out. Like if you
Yeah.
just take a step back and you're like, oh my goodness, like it doesn't have to be, I don't have to be the victim in this. I can actually
Yeah.
support myself to learn about all these other things.
Yeah.
And I think that's like a really beautiful thing. And I think that's why this platform is like so important for people. Like it's just,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, obviously I could write about it, but yeah.
Yeah. No, I would say too, and I remember our discovery call, and I would say you're definitely, I mean, I would say most people are open-minded, but once they get to us, but I would say that you were definitely, even though you push back on some things like gain off birth control, I felt like you were definitely open-minded. Like you just gave off that vibe,
Yeah.
even when I was talking to you. Like you were ready. Like I could just tell. I know some people are a little bit like one foot in, one foot out, like not totally believe in it. I know I felt like you were, maybe it's because you were kind of an athlete and food was you knew
Well,
that food was fuel in a sense. I don't know. I just felt like you had more of a belief in it than other people coming into it, where they're like, this is my last resort. I don't know if it's going to work. I felt like you knew it was going to work. At least I got that vibe.
oh, and like also that's because like everyone that sees us, like, I'm over here, you're like, oh, so happy. Here's my experience. Like that first call, I remember like sitting on my bed, like, I mean, I was so broken. Like I remember like just holding back tears and being
Mm,
so upset. And it's like when you're in that like desperate moment where you're like, I need someone that's different than all these other things that I'm constantly trying and
yeah.
putting my body through all these trials. So it was like, I was just like broken and sad and like desperately needed help from someone that I thought was well intentioned and like really wanted to take not just, like a week long, month long process, like wanted to take the journey with me over the course of 6 to 8 months and just say, okay,
Yeah.
this is about you. And I think immediately on the phone, because I have been calling so many therapists, so many dietitians, like I was like, I knew I had an issue and I was constantly looking out. And for me, when I just like immediately, like you just validated like how desperate I really was or like how lost I was. And you immediately were just like, I'm here for you. We're going to do this. We're going to figure this out. I think that was like the
Wow.
just immediately made me feel like seen. And so that's why I want to get across. Cause obviously now when you see me, it's like, oh, well, of course she's going to love it. Like, look at how happy she is. I was not like this like 8 months ago. Like it was not happy go lucky. Like it was definitely the opposite. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
know. I actually do remember you telling me that you did a lot of these calls. What do you feel like was missing? Because people do ask us all the time, like, what makes you guys different? And I'm like, honestly, I have no idea. Don't ask me that because I mean, okay, maybe it's how we teach, or maybe it's how our packages. I don't really know because I haven't been a patient in all these other practices. If I was a patient in their practice, then I'd be like, oh, this is what we do different. But I don't. So, like, what do you feel like was the biggest difference, I guess, that you saw?
Oh my gosh. And like I could go on a million different things about this. Just
Okay.
God. Well, it's just because in the way like when seeking therapists, seeking dietitians, whatever it is, like it's just like it's a business, right? I mean, obviously you
Yes.
business. And so and I even partially like this is kind of my like area of work too, which I
Yeah.
like have to get into, but it's like people when they see when they see a potential patient, a lot of the times it was we don't want to take you unless you're going to be a top paying client that you want to pay out of, you want to
Right.
take out of pocket pay. Like that's how people are typically looking at you. And you feel that as a patient, you feel that like, I
I see.
feel
Yeah.
when I'm talking to a therapist and I'm like literally putting my heart on the line, like clearly like at a very low point, when questions come up initially of just like, what can you afford? Oh, I'll push you off to maybe like this new onboarding person who hasn't seen anybody. It's just like, you feel like you're not worthy of their time. And it's just like,
Wow.
and it's just, it was constantly doing that, like constantly like trying to advocate for myself. And I think for me, like, at least just with looking at this, I really respected how it was very transparent, like packages, pricing, who you're going to work with. And like, that didn't even get addressed on my first call. I already knew it because I looked at the website. You
Yeah.
didn't bring that up. You made the initial call like all about me and like validating my emotions. And I think that was
Interesting.
the two things that was huge for me, because it's just like when you're initially talking to somebody, the conversation of money and the conversation of like their trauma and like why they're struggling so bad shouldn't really be in the same conversation, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what pushes a lot of people away from like different therapies and whatever. And like, that's why I was like,
Yeah.
that's why that was the difference really with this and what made me
Interesting.
push over. Yeah. So
Oh, that's so interesting. I mean, yes, I agree with you. Like and me as like a patient myself, like I'm always, that's just one of the things we're curious about is like, how much is this going to cost? I don't think that there's anything wrong with like being curious. And so
yeah.
in the business world, everyone always talks about like, do you post prices or do you not? And I'm like, I'm not trying to hide anything from anyone. Like if they
Yeah.
can't afford it, then they can't afford it right now. And that's totally understandable. But I'm like, I just like, I don't know. I'm just like, I know I like to see it. So I'm just going to send it to you before. So and I actually hate sales because of this, because it is like the whole call, I feel, and I've been on a patient side of this, is like waiting for the like, okay, but how much is this going to cost? Because I obviously have to understand if it's like within my budget or not, but it's always like awkward. And so I just didn't want that awkwardness to linger. And I also want people to know too, is like something I'm pretty passionate about when I'm on those calls is like, I don't want you to feel like you're about to be like have to be sold. So like as you know, like in sales, we're taught like how to overcome the
I
objection.
didn't feel that at all. Like,
Yes. And
and
that's my goal.
so like, I know when I'm being sold to, like,
Yes. Yes. I hate which I know I guess is maybe that's a bad business thing on my part, but the whole overcoming objection, I'm like, I don't want to sit here and be like, oh, well, like I can't afford it. And then, in business, they're like, well, you can't see, then you didn't show them enough of the value. I'm like, I'm not going to sit here and say like, so do you want to be sick for like, it just feels so icky to me. Like if you're just not ready, you're also just not ready. And I
yeah.
don't want to push you because guess what? It's going to be awful for both of us
No,
if I try
totally.
to force you into something that you're not ready.
Exactly. And also, because I remember we talked about this and I was just like, oh my goodness, the thousands of dollars that I have spent on just like therapies and different programs and whatever,
Yeah.
and none of it worked because it was all a sales pitch and I fell into it. And like
Yeah.
that was all and like, oh my goodness, what I would give to just approach this. And I mean, this is like, it's not even comparable. So it's like when you were talking to
Yeah.
me about, obviously, yes, like there's always going to be a hesitation with what people can afford or not. But like, just from my personal experience, I wish I would have learned about this before I spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on all these other things. Because
Yeah.
we're really, I mean, one, saved me money, but also saved me probably years of like highs and lows, highs and lows.
Yeah.
So I think that should be reassuring for people too, that are looking at something and like working with you and your team is like, like there are other solutions out there. Absolutely.
Yes.
But like
Yes.
really do your research in terms of how supportive are they going to be? Are you going to have someone that you're able to text all the time? Are you going to have someone that's going to be running labs
Yeah.
for you? Are you going to have someone that's like that is so rare to find in somebody. It's very rare to find people that are going to be working hands-on with you for like 6
Yeah.
months.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I agree. Cause I obviously have functional medicine providers and my doctor and stuff. And
mhm.
okay, granted, my doctor is my friend, so I do get a little bit more of a special treatment.
Mhm.
But most of the time it has been so like you can only have like 2 messages per month or just I don't know, a lot of like, I don't
Yep.
know, not structure, limitations, I guess.
Yeah.
And it is different, I would say, in that way. Because I mean, even with you and other patients, it's like we get into other things outside of like just food, because like you said, it's like a more holistic like approach. And I love it because I do feel like we become friends with a lot of our patients, which I don't
Oh,
know,
totally.
technically, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I love it because I mean, we're all humans just trying to do life together.
Yeah.
So that's how I honestly prefer it. And so I do think getting into like, I do joke and say like, we're doing life with you
Yeah. I
a
mean,
little bit.
yeah, like, I mean, you totally are. And it's like, food is something you eat every single day. And like understanding how your body works, like you're not leaving your body. So it's just,
Yeah.
I think like being able to work with people that you can just like, I think the key thing is like you want to work with people that can let the guardrails down. Like if you're not, people
100%.
aren't like really getting vulnerable with you, and then like there are going to be lots of like issues that probably don't come to the surface.
Yes.
And a lot of that is hidden by formality. Like a lot of like the deep rooted like trauma, all that stuff, like a lot of that are things that people don't want to convey to others. And it's only going to be
Yeah.
conveyed when you build friendship or you build
Yes.
some sort of like respect. And so that's where I think there's like a difference there too. I don't like, regardless of how much I would pay for therapy or other programs, I feel like I kind of have to have my like shit together in a way because I'm like, it's very formal. So I think this whole like, I loved
Yes.
how it was just like very informal and personalized. Like I feel like I could be way more open. So
Yes.
that was
I
special to me.
I love that you say that because that's definitely a goal. And even actually, this has been in like a conversation within like my doctorate program of like, I don't know, just your typical like, how are you today, man? Like a very formal. And I'm over here, like, I feel like I was the rebel on this like thread in our doctorate program. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to say, hey, girl, I'm going to say, hey, girl. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not trying to feel, I don't know, I guess old school professionals feel this way of just like, I don't know, you have to have a level of professionalism.
Mhm.
Yes, but there's also just like, again, we're both humans and it, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how I try to say this, but I'm glad that you felt that because that's what I'm trying to convey is like
Yeah.
it's not like your typical very formal like what's wrong today. It's just like we can talk about the weird shit, like literally shit, if needed. Like,
Yeah. I
it's
mean,
your shit.
literally. Yeah. No, I agree. I like that's so key, honestly. So I mean,
Do you feel like that's because we're like on the younger side?
yeah, probably.
Okay.
I feel like age probably like helps because
Yes.
I mean, like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, probably because I mean, I think we briefly talked about this, but it's like I've even talked about like when I was doing this, and I don't want to say this because this might be like triggering for people, like in the sense of like weight loss or whatever, but like I have like maintained a lower weight and like weight loss wasn't necessarily my goal coming into this. It was definitely like feeling super confident in my body. That was my
Yeah.
biggest thing. And having a healthy relationship and really good understanding of food in the process. And like, yeah, like I'm at a weight now that I haven't been in since like like since I was in college, but it's very healthy for me. And I feel like very confident. Like it's like my number one thing I rave to Claire about. Like I'm just like, I love how confident I feel. Like this, I haven't had this in years and years and
Oh,
years. And it's just like and like people sense it. Like, and it's not just from food, it's from everything
100%.
else. And like
Yeah.
people, and I'm gonna like get this back to like the age thing with my parents, but a lot of people will ask me, like they're just like, you're like glowing, or you're so happy, or like what are you doing with your workouts? Like blah, 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 whatever. And like, do you want the long-winded response? Because I can give you the long-winded response. And it's funny because it's like all of my like younger friends are like, oh no way, like, something like that would be super cool. And I feel like when I talked about it with my mom, like, what? Like, just, like I feel like she views it so black and white. Like it's not as
Yes.
nuanced of an issue for her. And I feel like I don't know if that's just like a generational thing or
I think
what,
so.
but yeah, I've noticed out of the responses I get more black and white responses and kind of like, huh. And then from younger people, it's like, oh my gosh, they get it, like they
Yeah.
actually get it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I know. I would say, I mean, we work across the board and I definitely can't say that the older generation is very stereotypical because I have had some awesome women who are older.
yeah,
And I feel like they're kind of kids at heart, but I am more likely to, when they're older, to kind of be met with like expecting the formal traditional, and I just feel like when they realize it's not, it's like it's a little like not awkward, but there's a shift, and then they get used to it and it's fine. But at first they're like, whoa, I didn't know, like I didn't feel like it was going to be like this, because they're just used to formal like care,
Okay.
especially if this is their first time in like the functional like field and stuff, which is so
Oh,
funny.
yeah, no, I mean,
So
completely.
I
Yeah.
love that, like the younger generations, just like, I don't know. I think we're like that just because with social media, like it's just very natural to us
Yeah.
to, I don't know, I guess be this way.
Probably like, I mean, I don't know. I feel like the younger generation is like, I mean, this is definitely probably more from the female perspective, but like a lot of women have seen like very toxic diet culture from their parents. And like,
Yes.
um, I think that our younger generation is just empowered to be like, I am not doing this. I'm not going to raise kids like this. I'm so tired
Yeah.
of being affected by just like dated values with like body image. So I think
Yes.
that, I mean, I think it's awesome that you work with younger people along with older people and are just like, regardless of age, empowering people to be like,
Yeah.
we have to follow these like old dated traditions of like what
Yeah.
like how we should eat, because it's like, who is that built for? Like this is built for you, something like built specific to you.
It's a
And
good
it's,
question.
you know, so I think that's why a lot of younger people are like seeking something like this out, because they're
Yeah.
like,
Oh yeah.
I'm not dealing with what I
Oh
saw.
yeah. Oh yeah. And I feel like even I'm surprised sometimes when there's like girls who are like 22 and 23. I'm like, oh, when I was 22 and 23, I was like just maybe getting a hint of like a healthy, like I was still, no, actually, I think I already switched from pre-med, but I was still like living somewhat standard American. And so like to see these young girls, like I'm prioritizing matcha and like meditation and exercise, I'm like, that's amazing. Like, I feel like we have to be moving in some type of right direction. Like, being healthy is officially cool. And I love that.
Especially it's so helpful living in Austin, Texas.
Yes, true.
It's very like very, very helpful, because like
That's
I
true.
was raised in like a small town in North Carolina where it's like, it's actually, I mean, it's like it's a college town, so there's definitely like there was like nice things there. Like I said, my mom always cooked, so I was like got really lucky with the fact that she would cook like healthier options for everybody. But
Nice.
a college that was like in the middle of nowhere basically, so I just have access to that. And then
Yeah.
when I lived in Austin, I was like shocked by the number of healthy
I
options.
know. I know. That's what any patient that's in Austin, I'm like, I don't even want to hear that you don't have any good options like going out to eat. I'm like, heck no, we have so many. And like, I'm so grateful for that.
So many. Like, and when I was like I lived in Utah for a bit and I lived in California for a bit. And here, obviously California has a lot of great spots, but I
Yeah.
lived in San Diego, and to be honest, like Austin has way more options. I thought
Really?
it was where I lived, because like I am more of like I walk the city, I don't drive that much. So in the area I live, maybe there just wasn't as much. But yeah, living here in Austin, I'm like amazed constantly about
Yeah.
like anything you can get here. Like tonight I'm going to Picnic, which is like my favorite spot
It's
here.
my favorite too.
It's my favorite. I go there way too much. Like
I know. I know. I'm like brunch, lunch, picnic.
literally. So
I
it's
love that.
great. It's like,
Oh,
yeah,
yay.
you're
Well, I'm so thankful for you. And I would love for you to share, like, I don't know, your top, I guess, like wins, or again, just things that you feel like you've really overcome and feel better about. And then, yeah, let us know. I know that you sent us your Instagram. If anyone wants to connect with Alex, you can. But I appreciate you just like sitting down and chatting with me about it.
Oh my gosh, I loved doing this. And obviously, like, you're so easy to talk to. And I just
Oh,
appreciate you for like validating, you know, my sappy self even coming into this whole journey. I was like very reassuring. And yeah, I don't know. I just think that I know like a lot of people struggle. And so
yeah.
I was someone that like did not think, I thought I was going to get to my like 50s or 60s and just have to constantly deal with a bad relationship,
Mm,
knowing that, you know, I'm approaching 26 and I'm like
figured it out.
it's crazy. Like I'm just like, I never envisioned a life where I didn't have to think about food constantly. I just can't believe
Yeah.
it's like the position I'm in. So
Yeah.
I credit all of it to you all. I tell
Oh,
they struggling, like I'm like, please, this has like changed my life. Yeah, I'm so, so grateful.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for coming on.
Of course. Thanks.